Welcome to The Explainer. I am so pumped you're joining us today because, oh man, we are going to unpack a truly chaotic, absolutely fascinating creative experiment. We're looking at a project by creator Wilson Wade Hines, who basically decided to see exactly what happens when you strip away all the normal comforts of the creative process and replace them with blind panic.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Can you write a film in 60 seconds? And I mean, not just pitch an idea or give a quick summary, but actually conceptualize the entire blueprint of a short film in exactly 1 minute. I mean, think about your own creative process for a second. Most of us take longer than a minute just to, pick a font for the title page. But that intense limitation, that's exactly the constraint placed at the very center of today's subject.
To really grasp how this works, we gotta look at the rules of a challenge the creator calls 60 Seconds Sunday. And let me tell you, this isn't just a race against the clock, it's practically a complete surrender of creative control. So, his girlfriend wrote down various audience suggestions, pulled right from his previous comments, onto little slips of paper. Then, in this very game show-style spectacle, they were dumped into a box to be drawn completely at random. And the catch? Whatever suggestion gets pulled out is the undeniable locked-in premise of the film.
And out of that box of infinite, totally unpredictable possibilities came this. Ryan hitting Colin with his car. Yeah, literally. A viewer named Colin actually suggested his very own fictional vehicular assault. It's incredibly absurd and frankly a hilariously unhinged premise. But here's the kicker. The second that slip of paper was read out loud, the clock immediately started ticking.
And that launches us into an absolute brainstorming sprint. Just imagine the pressure of that ticking clock. You start the 60-second timer, you grab a notebook and a pen, and you frantically scribble down literally any workable idea you can conjure up before that buzzer sounds. Because whatever actually makes it onto that paper in those 60 seconds, that is the final unchangeable blueprint. No further planning allowed, no second guessing, just pure, unfiltered, frantic output.
So here is what actually made it onto the page. This is the entire creative framework of the film, scrawled down with literally 4 seconds left on the clock. We've got meta-documentary, talking head, me, Colin, getting hit. That's it. Notice how incredibly bare bones this is? And yet this unfiltered list, scribbled in a moment of pure, utter panic, becomes the complete DNA of the entire project. It is the only roadmap he has to work with for the whole shoot.
Now, a limitation like this would totally paralyze most people, right? But the creator completely leans into it. He actually says, I'm a pretty run-and-gun filmmaker when shooting anyway. So this challenge didn't break his style, it actually amplified it. It forced his natural inclination toward on-the-spot improvisation into absolute overdrive, making this extreme constraint the absolute perfect catalyst for his specific brand of chaotic storytelling.
Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is just how abrupt the whole thing is. At 0 seconds, the prompt is drawn. Boom. At 60 seconds, the brainstorming suddenly ends. And then, immediately after, they transition directly into the filming phase. He completely bypasses traditional pre-production. I'm talking no storyboards, 0 script read-throughs, absolutely no location scouting. It is 100% instantaneous execution based on a 1-minute brainstorm.
Crafting the meta-mockumentary.
All right, so now we transition completely into the fictional universe born from this challenge. In reality, sure, we know this is a messy, impromptu, 60-second internet prompt, but in the fiction of the film, it is presented as a highly somber, deeply serious documentary investigating a college student's bizarre and highly specific death wish. Honestly, this mockumentary format is the absolute perfect structural solution. By treating something fundamentally ridiculous with intense academic gravity, it legitimizes the premise and, amplifies the comedy like 100-fold.
To really ground this absurdity, the film first introduces us to its central subject, Colin Harborbush. And I want you to notice just how fiercely normal his profile is. He studies when he's supposed to. He comes home to the dorm on time. He tags along to lunch, cracks some funny jokes, plays video games, and is generally pretty reserved. It is the absolute picture of a totally mundane college lifestyle. And establishing this rock-solid baseline of normalcy is absolutely crucial for setting up that classic straight man comedy dynamic that makes the rest of the film work so well.
And then, out of nowhere, the film drops this line. He has this one thing, though. He wants to get hit by a car. And it's delivered with absolutely 0 irony, completely, utterly deadpan. That jarring, immediate contrast between his quiet, super reliable dorm life and this incredibly violent, chaotic desire, that is exactly where the comedy lives. It is just a masterful use of juxtaposition. And remember, this was born entirely out of a frantic one-minute brainstorm.
The brilliance really shines through in the supporting characters, too. We get these dramatic, beautifully lit talking head interviews with a concerned roommate who legitimately says, "When I first heard that he wanted to get hit by a car, that was the first sign." Notice how the roommate is treating this exactly as if he's discussing a friend's tragic downward spiral into, like, serious addiction. That unwavering, almost tearful seriousness of the performance, reacting to a literally impossible, goofy premise, that's what really hooks you.
The philosophy of absurdity. So, as the film enters its final act, it really attempts to find this deep, profound philosophical meaning within the joke. And this brilliantly illustrates the mindset of our main character, Colin, when the documentarian asks him these super basic psychological questions to understand his psyche, like, "Who's your favorite friend?" Colin just plainly, blankly answers, "My bed." He is entirely apathetic. He's completely detached from the emotional weight of his own bizarre goal, perfectly playing the part of that misunderstood, slightly aloof subject you'd see in a pretentious indie documentary.
The comedy arguably peaks right around here. The documentary filmmaker, playing the voice of reason, tries to inject some actual logic into the situation, asking him, "What do you think will happen if you do? What are the consequences?" And Colin, simply, casually, without missing a beat, replies, "Hopefully I'll die." The main subject is fully 100% embracing the fatal reality of the prompt with zero hesitation, completely pulling the rug out from under the interviewer's attempt at a profound psychological breakthrough. It's hilarious.
But wait, the film's absolute philosophical masterpiece actually comes from the roommate. He starts trying to frame this terrifying, self-destructive ambition as just like a difference in personal morals. He says, some people will have differing opinions than you. They'll have different ways of life, lifestyles than you. I mean, it is amazing. He is literally philosophizing a brutal vehicular assault as if it's just some quirky alternative lifestyle choice that society just isn't quite ready for yet.
And from there, the mockumentary draws its hilarious ultimate conclusion. The roommate determines that the most important thing is simply to not judge, to just let people do what they want, because, as he wisely points out, anything can happen in college. They have successfully rationalized the deep desire to be literally run over by a moving vehicle as just a perfectly normal, albeit, slightly intense, phase of the classic college journey of self-discovery.
Which brings us to this line, serving as the absolute climax of the film's totally warped logic. If you want to go get hit by a car, who's stopping you? It is delivered with such unquestioning sincerity. It's framed as this beautiful, profound, almost poetic statement about personal freedom and bodily autonomy, except it's being applied to literally the dumbest possible scenario you could think of. But then, right after establishing this deep, mock-serious emotional climax, the film suddenly just shatters its own tension completely. Ryan, the actual driver of the car, completely ignores the existential weight of the entire documentary and just bitterly complains, "You're putting handprints on my car. I hate this guy." It is such an abrupt, amazingly petty, and perfectly timed punchline that wraps up this chaotic 60-second brainstorm in a wonderfully bizarre little bow.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question. How might extreme constraints actually fuel your own creativity? We just saw firsthand how a 60-second timer and a completely random audience suggestion forced a creator to bypass all that normal overthinking, rely purely on gut instinct, and somehow produce a hilarious, surprisingly well-structured short film. Sometimes having unlimited time and endless resources is actually the enemy of action. What could you accomplish if you gave yourself exactly 1 minute to just start? Seriously, think about it. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I will catch you in the next explainer.